A very, very warm welcome to the 13th meeting of the Africa Initiative. I would like to firstly extend a very warm welcome to the Minister of Finance of South Africa, who will also deliver a keynote, the Honourable Mr. Enoch Godongwana, sitting on my right. Fellow Commissioners, Commissioners General, Acting Commissioners, all the Africa Initiative members and delegates, the OECD Global Forum Secretariat under the leadership of Ms. Zaida Manata and her colleagues, the Africa Initiative donors and partners, invited guests, and also guests joining us virtually. Also a very special welcome to two of our non-member countries who visit and join us as guests today, representatives from Mozambique and Guinea-Bissau. Africa is home to almost 1.46 billion people. It's more than 18% of the global population, and projected to add another 250 million by the end of this decade. And at its current growth rate, which is about 3 times the average growth rate globally, likely to be the most popular continent by 2070. Africa is a rich continent with over 90% of global production in diamonds, chrome, and many other noble minerals, 50% of global gold production, and holds more than 10% of the global freshwater reserves. Africa is a rich continent. Africans in turn are poor, with Africa contributing to about 3% of global economic output. Africans have some of the world's highest disease burdens, with conditions that are completely treatable and curable. Poverty, inequality, and unemployment stubbornly persists on the continent that many of us call home. It is within this context that we are called to do the work we do. I consider it an inordinate privilege, knowing that our work can be transformative in its impact on the lives of Africans, and that this gives our work a higher purpose. The importance, therefore, of the work we do, enabled by information, insights, requires a level of transparency, a level of reciprocity, a level of openness that enables the free flow of information between ourselves. Because information is often the telltale signs that leads us to transactions of illicit financial flows, of the abuse of tax laws, criminal activities that not only erodes economic prosperity, but undermines social cohesion. And it is, therefore, a spotlight of this conference, the Global Forum, which is an idea that, under the auspices of the OECD, gives birth to the notion of tax transparency, of information transparency and exchange for the purpose of tax administration. We know the numbers, that today it is between 50 and 80 billion of euro that is annually deprived from the continent as a result of economic and tax crime. Every one of us employed as a leader in government, employed as a leader or an official in a revenue administration, our work indeed can make a difference. Established in 2014, the Africa Initiative has developed and expanded a commitment to tax transparency and information exchange. This is an endeavor that requires a level of collaboration and cooperation and the deep, uncompromising acceptance that a tax risk anywhere is a tax risk everywhere. And this is not a phenomenon that each of us can build higher walls, put on bigger locks, more sophisticated alarm systems to keep out the criminals, to prevent the abuse. In fact, we must lower our walls, connect with each other, become more neighborly in our quest against a common phenomenon that has become a scourge. And so tax transparency and the exchange of information is in all of our interest and serves to benefit all of our member countries and those countries we wish still to bring into this fold. I acknowledge the significant work that continues to take place within the Global Forum in support of tax transparency and the EOI. As always, I applaud the work of the Global Secretariat under Zaida's leadership. And I would like to express the wish that during the next few days, we make friends. We started last night. We exchange contact details. We build a resilient community of common purpose and common interest. This is our initiative. It is the Africa Initiative, led by African leaders for the benefit of our African people. We've made significant progress. Since 2009, the EOI has enabled African countries to identify over 1.2 billion euros of additional tax revenue through offshore tax investigations, including exchange of information on request, voluntary disclosure programs, and the implementation of the automatic exchange of information. Since 2014, when the initiative was started, tax transparency landscape in Africa have enabled the mobilization of more than 310 million euros in domestic resources. But we still have a long way to go. I look forward to robust, fruitful, and constructive discussions. I look forward to us leaving stronger as colleagues and friends than what we arrived. I would like to close by signposting that tomorrow we would like to have a conversation on tax transparency and exchange of information, gathering all of the nuggets over the next day or so. And I'd like to signpost the question, what keeps you awake at night in this regard? And how do you believe, and what have you seen from your own experience, and begin to move the dial in the way that we all have gathered here for? Thank you very much. And with these words, I welcome you and open the 13th meeting of the Africa Initiative here in the mother city of Cape Town. Thank you. And now I am one of the chairs of the Africa Initiative. My co-chair, my co-pilot, Dr. Philip Chodi, has unfortunately been called to other business in government of Togo, and if the technology works, we will beam him into the room to share his message with us. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur Edward Clisowata,
Thank you,
co-président. Madame Zainamata, chef du secrétariat du Forum mondial, Mesdames, Messieurs, chers délégués, je me réjouis de la tenue en ce jour du 6 juillet 2023 au Cap, en Afrique du Sud, de la 13e rencontre des membres africains du Forum mondial sur la transparence et l'échange de renseignements à des fins fiscales, réunis sous la bannière de l'initiative Afrique en partenariat avec les institutions et organismes de développement. Je voudrais souhaiter une très cordiale bienvenue à tous les participants et délégués des administrations fiscales présentes à cette réunion et m'excuser de ne pouvoir être physiquement avec vous en ce moment pour des raisons indépendantes de ma volonté. Mesdames et messieurs distingués participants, l'initiative Afrique est une aubaine pour nous, administration fiscale africaine, pour développer et consolider une culture de transparence et d'échange de renseignements à travers la mise en œuvre et l'utilisation des normes internationales, notamment l'échange des renseignements sur demande et l'échange automatique des renseignements sur les comptes financiers. S'il est indéniable que de solides avancées continuent d'être enregistrées dans la mise en œuvre effective des normes de transparence et d'échange de renseignements en Afrique, il reste toutefois beaucoup à faire pour que les pays africains puissent bénéficier pleinement de la transparence fiscale dans la lutte contre l'évasion fiscale et les flux financiers illicites. Le rapport Transparence fiscale en Afrique, publié chaque année par l'initiative Afrique, est désormais le paramètre de notre action dans ce domaine parce qu'il nous permet de mesurer les progrès et les défis de nos pays pris individuellement et collectivement. L'édition 2023 qui sera officiellement présentée ce jour nous offre l'occasion de réfléchir sur ce qu'il reste à faire pour accélérer l'agenda de la transparence fiscale en Afrique au service de la mobilisation des ressources nationales pour le développement de nos pays. Au titre des défis à relever, les administrations fiscales africaines devraient poursuivre l'utilisation effective de l'échange de renseignements sur demande. À cet effet, je me réjouis de partager avec vous de réelles expériences du Togo relative à l'évaluation par les pairs sur la mise en œuvre de la norme d'échange des renseignements sur demande dont le rapport de la phase 1 a été publié le 28 mars dernier. En effet, lors de l'évaluation de son cadre juridique sur les 9 éléments servant de base à l'évaluation de la phase 1, cadre juridique, le Togo a obtenu 7 éléments jugés en place et 2 éléments jugés en place mais nécessitent des améliorations. Des mesures ont été prises à cet effet afin d'adapter le cadre juridique aux recommandations à nous formulées. Bien que la note globale ne sera attribuée au Togo au terme de la deuxième phase de l'évaluation, j'aimerais évoquer les résultats pour dire aux autres pays africains qui se joignent au Forum mondial et à l'initiative Afrique que les normes de transparence fiscale ne présentent pas plus de difficultés aux pays africains qu'aux autres pays à travers le monde. Là où il y a de la volonté à faire des réformes qui s'imposent, le soutien technique du Forum mondial permet de faire des progrès rapides et de pouvoir engranger dans des délais courts les fruits de l'échange des renseignements dans la lutte contre la fraude et l'évasion fiscale internationale. À côté de l'échange des renseignements sur demande, l'échange automatique des renseignements sur les comptes financiers représente un potentiel énorme d'élargissement de l'assiette et d'accroissement des recettes fiscales sur le continent. Les premiers résultats récoltés par les pays africains déjà engagés dans cette forme d'échange de renseignements montrent que nous ne devons pas hésiter un seul instant à nous y lancer avec l'accompagnement du Forum mondial et les partenaires au développement. Mon souhait, c'est que cette réunion nous permette d'avancer vers cette direction. Enfin, Nous avons identifié au sein de l'initiative Afrique l'assistance technique au recouvrement des créances fiscales comme un autre défi auquel font face les administrations fiscales. J'ai foi que notre engagement collectif nous permettra d'avancer rapidement sur le terrain et ainsi de sécuriser les recettes fiscales grâce à toutes les formes de coopération fiscale internationale dont la complémentarité n'est plus à démontrer. Mesdames et messieurs, chers participants, au regard des nombreux défis à relever, je nous exhorte à conjuguer nos efforts entre nous et avec les partenaires afin de saisir l'opportunité que représente l'échange des renseignements pour réduire l'évasion fiscale et accroître nos recettes fiscales. Je ne saurais conclure sans remercier mon frère Edward Kesweta, le commissaire de South African Revenue Service, qui a bien voulu, en mon absence, présider cette 13e réunion d'initiative Afrique tout seul. Merci, cher Edouard. Je remercie enfin le comité d'organisation et toutes les autorités sud-africaines pour l'accueil de cette réunion qui, j'en suis sûr, marquera les participants. Je suis convaincu que l'ouverture d'esprit, la qualité des différentes interventions et le partage d'expériences permettront d'enrichir nos pratiques et fournir de meilleurs outils pour une plus grande performance dans la collecte des recettes fiscales intérieures par le biais de l'échange de renseignements. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. In his absence, to express appreciation to Dr. Philippe Chody, with whom I've had the pleasure and privilege to work with for the past 3 years already as part of the initiative, but also broader as colleagues on the African continent in revenue administration. We now have also a video recording, pre-recorded message from the chair of the Global Forum, Mr. Gail Farrar, and I ask the team to...
Les ministres, Monsieur Philippe Chaudier, commissaire général de l'Office togolais des recettes, et Monsieur Edward Kismeter, commissaire de l'Office sud-africain des recettes, vous êtes tous deux coprésidents de l'initiative. Mesdames et Messieurs les directeurs généraux et commissaires généraux des administrations fiscales des pays africains, chère Madame Zaïda Manata, chef du secrétariat du Forum mondial, chers membres de l'initiative Afrique, invités, partenaires, donateurs, chers collègues, chers amis, permettez-moi, avant toute chose, de m'excuser de n'avoir pas pu effectuer le déplacement au Cap dans cette île si merveilleuse pour participer à votre côté à cette 13e réunion de l'initiative Afrique. En dépit de cette absence, je suis profondément honoré et je vous remercie de l'opportunité de pouvoir m'adresser à vous. Je remercie l'Afrique d'avoir bien voulu accueillir cette réunion et salue la présence des autorités sud-africaines et la participation de tous les autres pays africains à un niveau très élevé. Par cette présence, vous démontrez la place que vous accordez à la transparence fiscale et à l'échange de renseignements comme outil de lutte contre la fraude et l'évasion fiscale afin de mobiliser vos ressources domestiques. Cet engagement s'est particulièrement illustré ces derniers temps par l'adhésion au Forum mondial d'un nombre impressionnant de pays africains en une seule année. Congo, l'Angola, le Zimbabwe et la Sierra Leone sont devenus membres du Forum mondial depuis juin 2022, qui porte à 37 le nombre total de pays africains qui participent aux travaux du Forum mondial. Un point spécifique de notre ordre du jour est dédié à l'accueil de ces nouveaux membres. Et dans ces conditions, vous me permettrez, en ma qualité de président du Forum mondial, de leur souhaiter de vive voix la bienvenue parmi nous. Je me réjouis de cette adhésion remarquable qui matérialise l'un des objectifs de l'initiative d'Afrique, à savoir obtenir plus d'adhésion politique autour de l'agenda en matière de transparence fiscale sur votre continent. Les pays africains travaillent sur un pied d'égalité avec tous les autres membres du Forum mondial, y compris et surtout en siégeant dans ces organes subsidiaires, tels que les groupes d'examen paritaire ou encore le groupe de pilotage. Le Kenya assure la vice-présidence du Forum mondial pour le mandat en cours. La participation effective des pays africains aux travaux du Forum mondial permet de prendre en compte vos points de vue et vos perspectives dans nos travaux et dans nos décisions. Le rapport sur la transparence fiscale en Afrique qui retrace année après année les progrès de l'initiative Afrique et dont la présentation sera, je n'en doute pas, l'un des temps forts de la présente réunion, livrera des chiffres, informations sur les résultats de la lutte contre l'évasion fiscale sur le continent africain grâce à l'échange de renseignements et grâce aux efforts que vous avez produits et avec vous, vos administrations. Ces résultats nous montreront aussi le rôle absolument déterminant de l'assistance. C'est un souci constant pour le forum technique de s'assurer que tous ses membres reçoivent le soutien nécessaire pour mettre en œuvre les normes et surtout pour en tirer profit dans la mobilisation de vos ressources nationales. J'en profite donc pour saluer tous les partenaires et donateurs de l'initiative d'Afrique qui, par leur soutien multiforme, permettent au secrétariat du Forum mondial de mettre en œuvre le second grand objectif de l'initiative, à savoir s'assurer que les pays africains sont suffisamment outillés pour utiliser la transparence fiscale, l'échange de renseignements comme des opportunités d'accroissement de leur ressources publiques et c'est vital sur votre continent. Votre contribution est la preuve que, comme le dit un adage africain, une seule main ne suffit pas pour attacher un paquet. Donc soyez-en remerciés. Les progrès qui seront célébrés aujourd'hui ne sont possibles que parce que nous nous soutenons les uns les autres. Dans cet esprit de famille qui caractérise le Forum mondial qui nous est tous très cher. Toutefois, il est évident que le travail est loin d'être terminé et je sais que l'une des raisons de la présente réunion est précisément de réfléchir sur le moyen de grouper nos travaux, nos efforts communs afin de consolider les acquis en matière de transparence fiscale en Afrique, de rallier le grand nombre de pays africains à cette cause et explorer de nouveaux horizons pour plus d'impact. Je me permettrai de citer Nelson Mandela quand il a dit « J'ai découvert ce secret après avoir gravi une colline. Tout ce que l'on découvre, c'est qu'il reste beaucoup d'autres collines à gravir. » Je remercie tous les participants pour leur présence et leur disponibilité à partager leur expertise, leur expérience avec les membres de l'initiative. Je remercie chaleureusement Monsieur Philippe Chedier, Monsieur Edouard Kismeter pour leur direction pour l'initiative Afrique, ainsi que tous les membres pour leur implication en vue de l'atteinte des objectifs de cette initiative. Je formule enfin le vœu que vos précieuses contributions fassent de cette 13e réunion de l'initiative Afrique un autre moment important pour la promotion de la coopération fiscale internationale, en particulier dans le domaine de l'échange de renseignements, et tout ceci au service du développement. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Gail Perot, the chair of the Global Forum, for your message and input. We miss you here in Cape Town. Now we have welcome remarks from Ms. Manal Corwin, Director of the Center for Tax Policy and Administration at the OECD, also a pre-recorded message. Thank you.
Dear Honorable Enoch Godingwana, Minister of Finance of the Republic of South Africa, dear ministers, dear co-chairs of the Africa Initiative, Commissioner Keith Fader and Commissioner Chaudier, dear Ms. Manata, Head of the Secretariat of the Global Forum, dear Commissioner Generals and Director Generals of Tax Administrations, dear OECD colleagues, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to address you today on this occasion of the 13th meeting of the Africa Initiative. I very much appreciate the opportunity to speak to you remotely this morning, and I sincerely apologize for not being able to join you in person in Cape Town due to a tight schedule with the ongoing discussions to finalize the agreement on the two-pillar solution to address the tax challenges of the digitalization of the economy. I would like to thank the South African authorities for hosting this important meeting of the Africa Initiative. I'm sure that delegates are enjoying the South African hospitality, and again, I wish I could be with you. Dear colleagues, I am impressed by the tremendous progress made in Africa on the tax transparency agenda in the last 9 years and the growing benefits gained by the countries in the region. The commitment and the cooperation of 37 African countries to unlock the full potential of tax transparency and exchange of information as a tool for better enforcement of domestic tax laws and for combating tax evasion is more than commendable. Your efforts are making a significant contribution to Africa's fight against illicit financial flows. African countries are establishing solid infrastructure for exchange of information. More and more African countries are joining the Convention on Mutual Administrative Assistance in Tax Matters, which connects them to more than 145 jurisdictions and allows African countries to implement almost all forms of international cooperation for tax matters, including exchange of information. Most of the African countries that are members of the Global Forum have a functional and equipped unit to operationalize exchange of information. And the results are there. Your countries are making use of the expanded bilateral relationships to request information to resolve tax audits and investigations with a cross-border element. Today's meeting will launch the 5th edition of the Africa Initiative Progress Report, Tax Transparency in Africa. The progress outlined in the report is significant. I read with great interest the very tangible results described in this report, which serve as an excellent example of how exchange of information can strengthen domestic resource mobilization and combat illicit financial flows. This progress is a credit to the work done by the Coalition of African Countries, the Global Forum, regional and international partners, and donors to promote the objective of the Africa Initiative. The commitment of African countries to the tax transparency agenda is critical to ensure sustainable change in the fight against tax evasion through exchange of information. Moreover, the broad cooperation across multiple stakeholders at the continental level contributes to strengthening the Global Forum family and ensuring that no single Global Forum member is left behind. This is what has made the Global Forum a real success story for multilateralism. I applaud the members, partners, and donors of the Africa Initiative for the great achievements that have inspired other regions where similar initiatives have been launched by the Global Forum, the most recent being the Asia Initiative. Dear colleagues, as you meet in Cape Town this week, we take note that despite the unprecedented progress made, there is still a lot to do to ensure that all African countries are well equipped to reap the benefits of improved global tax transparency. I encourage you to take advantage of this meeting to identify priorities, share experiences, and agree on the way forward. The Africa Initiative is your initiative, and I would like to assure you that we stand ready to continue to support and work with you and all partners and donors to continue to drive this work forward on the African continent. I very much look forward to being with you in person at the next gathering in support of this great initiative. In the meantime, I wish you all a fruitful meeting and impactful deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Colwyn. Thank you, Ms. Colwyn.
Merci, Madame Colline. pour
Thank you, Ms. Cohen, for your input, contribution, and support of the work that we do. Now, for a change, we don't have a video message. We have a real person. I would like to invite
J'aimerais inviter
Ms. Zaida Manata, the head of the
Zaida Manata,
Secretariat of the Global Forum,
chef du secrétariat du
make
Forum
a welcoming remark.
international mondial pour donner son
Thank you very
allocution
much,
d'ouverture.
Mr. Chair.
Non, merci,
Dear
Monsieur le
Honorable
Président, cher
Minister of
honorable
Finance of
ministre
South
des
Africa,
Finances et d'Afrique du
Mr.
Sud,
Enoch
Monsieur Enoch
Godongwana, dear
Godongwana,
members,
chers
partners, and
membres
donors of the Africa Initiative,
du Fonds de
dear
Africa
colleagues,
Initiative,
ladies
chers
and
collègues,
gentlemen.
messieurs, mesdames,
Thank you very much for
un grand
joining us
merci de nous
today.
avoir rejoints aujourd'hui.
We are deeply
Nous
pleased
sommes
to
très
welcome
contents
those of you who have worked
de recevoir
with
ceux de
us
vous qui
for a
ont
long
travaillé avec
time
nous
and
pour
those
un temps
of you who
important,
are just
et ceux de
starting
vous qui
this
viennent
journey.
à peine de
Please
commencer
allow
ce
me
parcours
to
avec
give
nous.
a very special
Permettez-moi
welcome
de
to
donner
Sierra Leone, who
de souhaiter la
unfortunately could
bienvenue à
not
Sierra
join us
Leone,
today,
qui nous a
to
rejoints
Angola,
aujourd'hui,
and
à
to
l'Angola,
Zimbabwe,
au
who join
Zimbabwe,
us
qui nous ont
this morning
rejoints
for the first
ce
time
matin
as
pour la
members
première
of the
fois
Global Forum
comme membre
and of
du
the
Forum
Africa
global
Initiative.
et de
We are very,
l'Africa
very
Initiative.
pleased to
Nous
see
sommes
our
très
family
contents de
growing,
voir notre
and I
famille
hope it's going to
croître
grow
et
even more.
j'espère que nous allons grandir même
Since
plus.
its inception
Du
in
fait, depuis sa
2014, the
création en
Africa
2014,
Initiative has been a
l'initiative
catalyst
africaine a
for
été un
change,
catalyste
bringing
pour le
together a
changement,
coalition of partners
regroupant
and
une
donors
coalition
to
de
support
partenaires
African
pour
countries'
soutenir
engagement in the
les pays
global tax
africains
transparency
s'engager
and exchange of information
dans la
journey.
transparence des
With
taxes
the
internationales.
co-chairs, I would like to thank all the partners and donors to the Africa Initiative for their support to advance the tax transparency agenda in the continent. From the Global Forum Secretariat, I would like to say that we are very honored to count on your trust and your collaboration, which have allowed us to walk with you on this journey, on this path. The Africa Initiative was the first of the regional initiatives that was launched by the Global Forum with its partners and donors. Each initiative has its own characteristics. The Africa Initiative is vibrant, full of the sense of brotherhood and the strong friendship. Yesterday, during the amazing welcome event that we all enjoyed, you could see the strong sense of a common purpose and the happiness that I could witness in each face when we saw each other, when we met, when we greet. So this is the face of the Africa Initiative. This is your face. The 13th meeting of this initiative aims to enable members to take stock of the progress made in 2022 in implementing and benefiting from exchange of information standards, to share experience with peers, and to deliberate on the future, on how we address the remaining challenges, how we move forward. I take this occasion to specifically thank the South African authorities, especially the South African Revenue Services, for welcoming us here in Cape Town. This is not my first visit to Cape Town, and I hope it's not going to be the last one. Every time I feel more and more impressed by the beauty of this city and by the hospitality of South Africans. I thank you, Mr. Kiswetter, for bringing us here today and for welcoming us so warmly. Since my arrival, I have benefited from this wonderful hospitality, which I'm sure all of you have experienced, and I am also sure will continue until the end of this meeting. I thank the co-chairs of the Africa Initiative, Mr. Kiswetter and Ms. Todier, for their leadership since the beginning of their term. It has been really a great pleasure to work with both of you and your excellent team. We count on your steers and your leadership as we work to advance tax transparency in Africa. I look forward to the engaging and fruitful deliberations that I'm sure are going to take place in the next 2 days. And once again, I commit the Global Forum Secretariat to walk with you on this journey and to support you on your movement towards enhanced tax transparency. Thank you.
Thank you, Zaida, and thank you for the appreciation that you expressed. I'm sure my colleagues who have really done all the hard work behind the scenes value that. The Commissioner of the South African Revenue Service works under the policy guidelines of the Minister of Finance. So I must be careful what I say now, that nothing that I say is career limiting, because the gentleman next to me is also my boss. Minister Enoch Godongwana, Minister of Finance and a member of the South African Cabinet, is a recognized leader in society in many, many fields. Not only has he grown up and demonstrated his skill as a leader in organized labor, but he has also demonstrated this leadership in both public and private sector, serving in various roles in the financial sector, in Johannesburg Stock Exchange listed companies, and in regulatory bodies in the financial services sector. He's also within the ruling party has played a leadership role as a member of the National Executive Committee, but also for the longest period served as the head of the Economic Transformation Committee in the party. He has been in government as a Deputy Minister of Economic Development, a Deputy Minister in Public Enterprises, member of the legislature, member of the provincial legislature in the Eastern Cape, but most recently and most welcoming, on the 1st of August, in August 2021, in the challenge of exiting COVID, our President Ramaphosa placed the stewardship of the Ministry of Finance under his leadership, and it's been a pleasure to work with him. It is now my pleasure also to invite him to address us. Minister, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. I must address you in your two jobs, both as Program Director today, also as the Commissioner of SARS of South Africa. Commissioner and I constant battle. He says he spends more time collecting money and sweating and collecting money. I spend more time spending this money battling. I don't necessarily agree with him, but that's his view. But we work quite well. Commissioners Generals and Acting Commissioners Generals, the African Initiative members and delegates, the Global Forum Secretariat representatives, the African Initiative donors, and partners and guests. And fellow Africans, welcome to South Africa. My job is not that of an important job, it's just to welcome all of you here in South Africa. That's what I'm called. I have to fly 2 hours in order to do a small 5-minute job of welcoming you. I've had my engagement with Commissioner Kisworth, reflecting on the remarkable work of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. But its organization called the Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information for Tax Purposes, and the African Initiative to improve the tax transparency landscape for the benefit of developing countries. And I've indicated that my job is to welcome you. You are expert on this trade. I'm not going to be saying much on the detail. Most of us in this room are in the business of domestic resource mobilization. I would venture to say that this is one of the most courageous carrier Charlotte Collins because it is at the center of enabling governments to provide infrastructure and basic services and improve the lives of society at large, but especially the lives of the poor, vulnerable, and marginalized. The African Union Commission estimated that the amount of illicit financial flows from Africa ranged between 48 billion euros and 77 billion euros in their domestic resource mobilization report of 2019. As tax administration, you are tasked with the imperative responsibility of collecting what is due to governments in a timely and efficient manner. However, this task is not easy where tax evasion, tax crimes, and illicit financial flows continue to spirit away revenues due to the state. A means to counter this scourge is by enabling tax administrations with the requisite tools and capabilities. Measures such as tax transparency through exchange of information as facilitated by the Global Forum and its partners. These tools are continually being improved, but this is only effective when the necessary political will is explicit. We see this in the quality of laws that are passed, international agreements that are entered into, and the commitment to build competent and fully resourced tax administrations, and the development of best international practices in effective tax administrations. Your meeting will look at very important tools in the arm of tax administration: exchange of information on request, automatic exchange of information, including the importance of collecting beneficial ownership information. It has been 7 years since the Panama Papers were first leaked. Together with the International Consortium of Investigating Journalists, 370 of the publications around the world simultaneously published the Panama Papers, a leak of more than 11.5 million financial and legal records. This was groundbreaking in the nature and size of the information placed within the public domain. Various other leaks followed, and I'm sure many tax administrations would not be opposed to be on the receiving end of similar leaks, especially where they expose nefarious practices and opaque structures. The timing of the leaks was quite apt. It came after the G20 leaders agreed to the development of a global model for the exchange of information, automatic exchange of information. The first such exchanges between early adopters of automatic exchange of information took place in 2017, after the papers were leaked. And the number of jurisdictions and the volume of financial account information being shared has increased steadily. The international tax transparency standards have been proven to be an effective tool in curbing tax evasion and other illicit flows and generating additional revenue ready to be invested in the development and provision of public services. During the past 8 years, the African Initiative has changed the tax transparency landscape in Africa, enabling the mobilization of more than 300 million euros in domestic resources. However, continuous action is needed to ensure a long-lasting positive impact. Working with its regional partners, the Global Forum should continue to serve African countries and to support African Initiative in its effort to build or enhance their capacity to use the exchange of information standards at their full potential on the continent. I must say, it is also going to be an important tool in a number of respects. We are involved in what is called African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Tools such as this are going to be important. New developments which is beginning to shock us as Africans is the impact of water. South Africa has been grey listed, Nigeria has been grey listed. Last week I was in SACU, my colleague from Namibia, I don't know whether the Namibians here, were telling me the Minister of Namibia couldn't attend the meeting because they're trying to make a lot of changes in their legislation to comply with FATA. So a tool like this is going to be quite an important part of it. And thirdly, the Commission has made reference to our resource endowment. If you look at that resource endowment, its critical importance in the green agenda is an important aspect. Those are some of the issues that are going to be critical from a South African experience. I can unequivocally say these processes are essential tools to drive tax compliance. My commissioner always fights with me, and I complied this time that in my budget, I must explain the improvement in revenue, as some percentage of it is as a result of improved compliance. So that is our experience. As such, I want to urge members of other African initiatives to continue this important work, to collaborate closely, and to ensure that a sustainable legacy is left behind for future generations. Before I thank you, I hope the Commissioner is going to make you to enjoy Cape Town. He's got a program not to keep you in this hall forever. Going to make sure that you can go to Table Mountain. You can make sure that you can taste some of our wines. You can make sure that you can see Robben Island. I thank you.
So thank you, Minister Godongwana, for again just positioning the conference proceedings over the next few days, and in particular highlighting the need for the exchange of information and information transparency as it impacts on our work and ultimately on the lives of Africans. So thank you for reminding us of that. Delegates, you would have seen in the original program, we had hoped to now have a conversation between our Minister of Finance and the Minister of Finance of Cameroon, who unfortunately could not attend due to business in the country. And so that session will not take place as the program. What we will do now is take our break, and the staff will guide you to the lower floor, where we will take our traditional photo, our group photo. So if we can all make our way there fairly quickly, we can be back here at 10:45. So we will have the photo, and along the way, enjoy a cup of coffee, a chat, comfort break, and let's try and start promptly at 10:45. Thank you. Welcome back from the photo session and from enjoying a short break, your favorite beverage. Hopefully spoke to someone you haven't spoken to before. We now are going to have a very brief session where we would like to welcome all new members. Since the 11th Africa Initiative meeting that was held in Nairobi in Kenya during June 2022, 3 of our fellow African countries have joined the Global Forum and the Africa Initiative, and that really delights us. They are Angola, Zimbabwe, and Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone, unfortunately, is not present today, but I have in front of me representatives from the other 2 countries, and I welcome them to the front. It's our pleasure to welcome these 3 countries where we come together and, of course, express our commitment and our solidarity through dialogue, but also through action, and share progress that we've made as peers on the use of tax transparency and information exchange as a tool for combating tax evasion and other illicit financial flows. We share experiences, our learnings, and insights. and we share and discuss common challenges that faces our continent and therefore each of us as member countries. And so welcome to Angola, Zimbabwe, and in their absence, Sierra Leone, as members of the Africa Initiative. I'd first like to give the floor to a board member of the Angola General Tax Administration to deliver a short intervention, and he is Mr. Leonildo Manuel. So.
Dear Co-Chair, Mr. Edward, Mr. Zaida, thank you. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, muito bom dia. We are Angola. In our country we speak Portuguese, but now it's necessary to speak English. I'd like the next year we can speak in Portuguese here. We became a member of Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange Information this year, in March this year, and we are we are very happy to stay here. For us, it is a big opportunity to change the information, to change the experience of tax administration. In our country, we are making a lot of reform about the tax, and we want to building the economy very transparent and in compliance. And we see this forum how a big opportunity to learn everything about the tax, and we need your help, and we are very happy to work with yours. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manuel, for representing the Angola General Tax Administration. I'd like now to invite, in the absence of Ms. Regina Chinamasa, the CG of Zimbabwe, she is represented today by Mr. Edward Piri, who is the Acting Commissioner for Revenue Services. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. Co-chairs of the African Initiative, Mr. Edward Kiswita and Mr. Philippe Jody, all protocols observed. I take this opportunity on behalf of my Commissioner General Regina Chinamasa, who is not present owing to other business engagements, to extend our profound gratitude and appreciation for the opportunity to join this great forum, which is a critical front in fighting against tax evasion and illicit financial flows. You will notice that this has become a global scourge that requires effective information across the continent divide. Transparency and exchange of information in tax matters will see Zimbabwe making gigantic strides in revenues given the exposure that we currently have in our economic sectors, particularly the extractive sector. Information gathered and obtained through the African Initiative should enable us to perforate shams and tax evasion schemes with much ease. We are so pleased to be part of this big family, working towards the same goal of combating tax evasion and illicit financial flows. And these efforts obviously are resulting in a plethora of positive downstream impacts that include inter alia domestic resource mobilization. ZIMRA is aware of the international efforts to improve transparency and exchange of information for tax purposes, and would like to take part in this transparent global environment. It will help us to address the hidden economy, which accounts for a bigger chunk of non-compliance. And this is where deliberate non-compliance takes place with well-orchestrated tax schemes and scams that cut across the continent divide. We have been grappling with this challenge mainly at a localized level, but we believe by joining the Global Forum for Transparency and exchange of information for tax purposes in the African Initiative, some of the problems will be a thing of the past. We obviously have got our expectations, and as you know, we are in our infancy in terms of exposure and the requisite infrastructure for a seamless exchange of information, and I hope we will get the necessary and appropriate assistance for us to hit the ground running in as far as our role on the forum is concerned. Obviously, being a new kid on the block, you get the excitement to want to talk more, but I want to say with these few remarks, I want to thank you, co-chairs. I submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Piri, and again convey our messages of warm welcome to Fiji and also to Angola. Our best regards and most welcome. I'd like to, before you leave, to hand over. Let's just wait for a second still. The last word to my colleague here next door, head of the Global Forum, Zyda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm very, very happy to see the Global Forum family growing, and we are happy to have you as the new members of the Global Forum. Please be sure that you will get the support that might be needed to implement the standards and also to benefit from them. We are also very happy to have you working on an equal footing with all the other Global Forum members and to see the African voice growing and being stronger and stronger. We hope it's going to be the path for the next years to come, that we have more and more African countries joining the Global Forum, strengthening its voice, and being able to ensure that its desires, its needs, and its views are well heard in the international context. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You may now take the chairs again. So we move straight then into the next session, and as our two new members leave, I also invite Mr. Logan Wart to join us for the next session, which is the launch of the Tax Transparency in Africa 2023 Africa Initiative Progress Report. The report is an important edifice, a compilation, and a record that highlights tax transparency in Africa as a key output of the Africa Initiative. And it measures the progress made by African countries using tax transparency and exchange of information to improve domestic resource mobilization and to advance our fight against illicit financial flows. The report is a joint effort by the Global Forum, ATAF, and the African Union Commission, who are key partners in the work that we do on the continent, not only conceptualizing and steering this work, but also partners of implementation on the ground alongside the Global Forum Secretariat. It's also now my pleasure to, as I said, welcome Mr. Wart to join us. He needs no introduction in Africa. He is the Executive Secretary of the Africa Tax Administrators Forum, ATAF. Many of us around the table have dual citizenship. We are citizens of the AI and we are citizens of ATAF. So he is well known. So welcome to join us, Mr. Wart. And I would like to hand over to Zyda to present the main findings of the report, after which we will launch it.
Thank you very much, Chair. This report measures the progress made by African countries and the year of 2022, and it also points out to the challenges that the countries on the continent are facing and the way forward. So the idea is to present to you the main findings and the key takeaways of this report. So it's well known African countries suffer great losses from illicit financial flows. It was mentioned by the chair at the beginning of this meeting today that studies estimate the range of illicit financial flows from Africa between 50 and 80 billion of dollars annually, and the trajectory is an upward trajectory. So if we aim at attaining the sustainable development goals and finance the development of Africa, there is a need to fight illicit financial flows. And the loss and the gap to finance the sustainable development goals was estimated before the COVID in 200 billion of US dollars. But after the COVID, as this gap has just increased, and it's expanded by more than 50%. So now we are talking about 350 billion of American dollars as the financial gap for the sustainable development goals. Of course, this can only emphasize even more the urgency of eliminating illicit financial flows, and then to be able to finance the development of Africa and to meet the goals for the 2030 agenda for the sustainable development. This is the target 16.4 of the goal 16 of the UN agenda. Usually we talk a lot about illicit financial flows, and there is a lot of controversy on what it encompasses, what it doesn't encompass. However, there is common understanding that illicit financial flows are the financial flows that are generated by methods, practice, and crimes, aiming to transfer financial capital out of a country in contravention of national or international laws. Taking from there, the link between illicit financial flows and transparency is clear. The more light we have on the flows, the more information you have, the more transparency you have, the less space there is for illicit financial flows. So tax transparency is an effective tool to combat illicit financial flows, among which tax evasion. And so, of course, to mobilize domestic research. So we believe that transparency and exchange of information is critical to achieve the agenda of 2063, the Africa we want, because it can contribute for domestic research mobilization and to respond to the legitimate aspirations of the African people. There is a study that was published by the World Bank in February this year. It's called Cross-Border Exchange of Information and Tax Revenue Mobilization in Africa. And this study has concluded that the participation of African countries in exchange of information has the potential to increase tax revenues from 5 to 19% of GDP. And this study demonstrates that it's not only the specific immediate link between the collection of that is due to an exchange of information request, but it's also because of the transformation that having access to information and implementing good practice and good standards have in the whole of the government institutions. It also has a key impact on tax morale and good governance. So this study was published in February this year. As a response to this need, the Africa Initiative was launched in 2014 as a partnership of a global forum, African members, regional and international organizations, and development partners. It was motivated by the fact that by then, in 2014, it was acknowledged that there was very good progress in tax transparency in general. However, African countries were not yet using these tools to the same extent than other countries. So there was a need to have a specific focus on African countries and to respond to their needs, their aspirations, and their expectations. Also, as more we work together, we realize that it's important to respond to the priorities that are set up by African countries and have a specific approach to address them. So this is where we started. We had 16 members in 2014, and today the Africa Initiative is a strong partnership with 37 African members. Of three of them have joined in 2023, so they are not considered in the report, as the report is a snapshot of 2022. We have 16 regional and international organizations and development partners as key partners of this initiative. These include the Africa Union Commission, ATAF, TREDAF, African Development Bank, and many others. So we are really a good coalition of willingness to move forward the tax transparency agenda. We're going to see in the report that this has built shared vision for tax transparency on the continent, and we have made good progress. Not yet where we wish we would be, but yes, we are on the way to get there. For the period 2023 and 2024, the Africa Initiative has been co-chaired by Mr. Edward Kiswetter, the Commissioner of South African Revenue Services, who is gratefully hosting this meeting, and Mr. Philippe Chaudier, who you heard earlier, the Commissioner General of the Togolese Revenue Office. The Africa Initiative has been built around the two strategic axes. The first one is to increase political awareness about the benefits of tax transparency and exchange of information, and this aims at gaining the necessary political buy-in and the commitment from African decision makers. The presence of the Minister of Finance this morning just highlights how high this is in the political agenda. And this political commitment is key to set up the ground for the second strategic axis, which is to develop sustainable and inclusive capacity in African countries. So we acknowledge the progress made in 2022 on this report, and we had a contribution from 38 African jurisdictions, and it includes feedback from 3 countries that had not participated in the previous year's report, and these are Chad, Congo, and Malawi. And on the other hand, Chad, Congo, and Malawi have not contributed this year, but they had contributed the previous year. But we got contributions from Guinea-Bissau, Sudan, and Zambia. So we still have 38 countries, but not the same. This report has become a barometer of the tax transparency development on the continent, and also a compass for future action. So I welcome you to the findings of the tax transparency report 2023 now. We have held a high-level events and meetings with key stakeholders, key decision makers, and also we have been working with African institutions and the civil society organizations. In these efforts to raise political awareness and about the benefits of tax transparency and exchange of information, has resulted in very positive outcomes. I think most of you would recall that during the last year's meeting of the Africa Initiative in Nairobi, Kenya, we were very pleased to, by the end of the meeting, welcome Congo as the 34th member of the Global Forum and the Africa Initiative. Also, of course, we had just welcomed Angola, Sierra Leone, and Zimbabwe, and this is also the result of conversations, understanding, and engagement with these countries that resulted in their membership to the Global Forum and to the Africa Initiative. Further, in last year, we had the Botswana endorsing the Yaoundé Declaration. And this declaration is a call for strengthened efforts to curb tax evasion through transparency and exchange of information. Now we have in the Yaoundé Declaration 33 African countries signing it, plus the African Union Commissioner. And we hope that in the future we're going to have many more countries endorsing the Yaoundé Declaration. So one of the other strategic axes is building sustainable capacity. And this includes assistance to first strengthen the legal frameworks to ensure the availability and the access to information for tax purposes. Secondly, improving the organization of tax administration, in particular to the setup of an equipped and skilled exchange of information unit, and training tax officials, both from the exchange of information unit as well as from the auditing and investigation functions. And so they are equipped to use the exchange of information instruments to fight tax evasion and mobilize domestic revenue. So the report shows the good progress made in this area. And last year, we had 4 countries, Kenya, South Africa, Tunisia, and Uganda, identifying 66 million euros in additional revenue due to information received as a result of requests sent for exchange of information. In addition, one single African country reported having identified more than 10 million euros through the exploitation of the data received automatically under the AOI standard. So in total, we have only 5 countries reporting having identified more than 76 million euros in 2022 due to the implementation of the tax transparency standard. I believe this amount is even higher, although this is the highest amount ever reported by African countries as having collected as a result of exchange of information. But I believe these results are even higher because not all African countries are being monitoring the link between exchange of information and revenue collected. But on the bright side, I can say that since the launch of the Global Forum in the current format, African countries have identified 1.69 billion of additional revenue due to exchange of information. And it encompasses on request, automatic exchange of information, as well as voluntary disclosure programs. So on the good side yet, we see that this has a great potential to grow, and the more and more familiar the countries are with these tools, the more they exploit these tools, the more revenue should be collected. And if we manage to monitor this link between revenue collection and exchange of information, we would be able to further demonstrate the benefits that countries are getting from these tools. So this revenue is the result of the efforts to build infrastructures and capacity to use exchange of information as tools to mobilize research. At the end of last year, a majority of African countries that responded to the survey had put in place the appropriate elements, the appropriate infrastructure to use exchange of information and to participate in this exchange. So 37 countries, which means 97% of the respondents, delegated the function of competent authority from the Minister of Finance to the or to the head of the tax administration to more operational levels. And this is very important to make the exchange of information process more efficient and more up to speed with the needs of this process. 30 countries, I mean 79% of the respondents, had established exchange of information units to coordinate this exchange with their partners. 25 countries, which means 56%, had developed procedural manuals to guide the officials and to ensure that the process are performed following the appropriate rules and procedures. 23 countries, which means 61%, had established monitoring tools to assist in the management of the handling of requests, meaning that they could monitor when the request came in, where the request was at that moment, and when it was responded, and also to monitor the impact of exchange of information on domestic research mobilization. In addition to putting in place the EOI infrastructure at home, it is also necessary to exchange of information, to have the network, to have the legal instruments to be able to exchange taxpayer information with other partners. And so for this purpose, it's very important to have a broad network of exchange of information relationship. And one of the objectives of the Africa Initiative, of course, is to help countries to broaden their exchange of information network, and so that officials, tax officials in their investigations and audits, they can have access to information that is held abroad by more and more countries. So one of the key elements to do that is the mutual administrative assistance, the Multilateral Convention on Administrative Assistance in Tax Matters, as well known as its nickname, the MAC. And I'm going to compare now the number of relationships, exchange of information relationships that African countries have in force now. We have, at the end of last year, African countries have 3,077 exchange of information relationships, and out of them, 2,448 of them are due to the MAC. So you can see that the MAC is really a very powerful tool to signing one single instrument. You have access to more than 140 relationships with your partners. So in 2022, one African country, Madagascar, signed the MAC, and two other countries, Mauritania and Rwanda, ratified and deposited their instrument of ratification, bringing the MAC into force in 2022. So as of December 22, we have 18 African countries that had ratified and brought the MAC into force. And it means we had two more compared to last year, to the previous year. In 2022, African countries received more requests than what they sent. They sent 531 requests, as you can see in the orange line, and they received 683 requests in the green line. It must be said that they sent fewer requests in 2022 than what they said in 2021. So the graphic also shows that despite the drop, this level is still higher than what we had in the pre-COVID moment. But still, you can see that there is still a longer space to improve on the using of exchange of information on request tools. One possibility to justify this is that maybe more countries are resuming their pre-COVID process, and so they are sending more requests. That's why African countries receive more requests. But also, it can be that African countries are not using the tools as they could. On a positive note, we had more African countries making requests in 2022 than what we had in 2021. We had 19 countries using exchange of information on request in 2022, and we had only 15 in the previous year. I don't even need to say that, but I would highlight this once again, is that the progress is quite uneven. We have only 4 countries, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, and Tunisia, that accounted for 86 of all the requests sent in 2022. And out of all these 4, only 2 of them accounted for 75% of all these requests. So we see there is still a long way to go here, but those who are using this tool, they are reaping the benefits of it. So I think this is a call for us to raise awareness especially among tax auditors and investigators of the potential of exchange of information, when they can use it and how they can use it. Also, there is a call for senior management of the tax authorities to put exchange of information high on their strategy to mobilize domestic research and to tackle tax evasion. Automatic exchange of information has been considered by many as a tipping point on the fight against tax evasion. We have over 110 jurisdictions that are already exchanging every year financial account information on an automatic basis, and this number would reach 123 in 2026, if not more, if other countries commit from now until then. And the potential of this form of exchange of information is yet to be unlocked in Africa. When it started in 2017, we had only 2 African countries engaged in this form of exchange, Seychelles and South Africa. The following year, Mauritius joined them, and the next year, Ghana. In 2020, Nigeria joined, and this year we had the expectation that Uganda would do it. The following year, 2024, Kenya and Tunisia, and finally in 2025 that Morocco and Rwanda would do it. We have now only 5 countries exchanging information automatically in Africa, but on the good side, all of them do it on a reciprocal basis, which means that all of them receive information. They are not only providers, but they also benefit from these exchanges. And we hope to reach 10 African countries engaging in this form of exchange of information, but this is still not enough. This form of exchange is really a tipping point in the fight against tax evasion. So we would like to see many more African countries doing that. And to support this implementation, the Global Forum launched in 2021 a new strategy to unleash the potential of automatic exchange of information for developing countries. And we have been developing toolkits to support jurisdictions that are keen on implementing this form of exchanges. And these efforts include a new e-learning course that was launched in March 2022. Initial feedback from automatic exchange of information indicates the potential that this form of exchange has to mobilize domestic revenues. As I had mentioned earlier, one single African country identified 10.6 million in additional revenues, including tax, interest, and penalties from the use of CRS data. Until 2021, countries implementing automatic exchange standard had identified over a total of 90 billion, made of 3.5 billion through the use of CRS data and 87 billion through the use of voluntary disclosure programs prior to the starting of automatic exchanges. As shown by the graph, you see that African countries have received more information than what they had sent, which means that they have the potential to further benefit from this tool. In 2022, the 5 African countries exchanging CRS data received information covering 1.59 million of accounts with a total value of 182 billion of euros. And they sent information on 580,000 of accounts with a total value of 122.5 billion. So they are net receivers of data. In 2023, 33 African countries benefited from either an induction program, 15 of them, which is a comprehensive technical assistance program that is offered to all new members after 2015, when we started this approach. This is going to be offered as well to the new members. It's a comprehensive program to support them in the implementation of the standards and the use of them. We had also 14 African countries that benefited from tailored technical assistance and 4 who benefit from pre-membership support. The African continent received 33.7 170 officials attended 15 trainings that were organized by the Global Forum Secretariat, and some of them in partnership with our partners. One program that I want to emphasize here is the Train the Trainer program. It was launched in Africa as a pilot program in 2021, and it has the objective of creating and supporting a highly skilled network of trainers that can localize and sustainable knowledge and ability to maintain and enhance the use of exchange of information standards. In December 22, we had more than 1,800 tax officials that had been trained by 61 local trainers in the 29 participating African countries. We have a new edition of this program now, and we have 34 participants from 18 countries across the continent. We are very much looking forward to seeing the result of this new edition of the program. Finally, to promote female officials in leading positions, we had launched the program Women Leaders in Tax Transparency. This program was launched in 2022. And I have to say that this is very close to my heart, this program. We had 22 female tax professionals from 22 developing countries participate in this program, and we had 8 African countries. We had ladies from Eswatini, Kenya, Liberia, Mauritius, Senegal, South Africa, Togo, and Uganda participating. In this year, the participation of African tax officials has grown, and we have 12 African officials participate in the Women's Leader in Tax Transparency program. And I had the great pleasure to meet one of them yesterday. You probably will recall that African countries identified their interests and their need to further explore the assistance in the recovery of tax claims in a cross-border context. It was considered that there was a challenge, and they called for strengthening this international type of cooperation. So we continued the work on this. In 2022, we had been doing a lot of work on this area, and we had a meeting of the working group in April 2022, where we had a focus on the assessment of domestic tax debt management maturity using the tax debt management maturity model. And that was an exercise to take stock of where we were in Africa. And we outlined at this meeting a proposed toolkit to help on the assistance on cross-border recovery. Then we had a 3-day training in September 2022 in Tunis, Tunisia, under the Technical Assistance Program in Tax Matters for Tunisia that is funded by the EU And that program was attended by 31 Tunisian officials to raise their awareness on the challenges and the opportunities of cross-border assistance in the recovery of tax claims as a way of supporting their domestic resource mobilization efforts. This year, we have more progress on this topic, and I'm going to talk about that a bit later. So looking ahead, I think we all can recognize that the tax transparency agenda has greatly advanced in Africa, but a lot more needs to be done. We have only a limited number of African countries using their exchange of information infrastructure that they put in place, but they are not using them to make requests for information. So we're going to continue our efforts to consolidate these infrastructures, to develop strategies, and to have a high-level management commitment to promote and push for the use of exchange of information as a tool to mobilize research, and also to track the impact of these tools on the domestic research mobilization. Also, we're going to strengthen our offering in helping countries to put in place the essential building blocks to participate in automatic exchange of information. And in this sense, I want to mention that we have just launched a new guiding tool on the implementation of a secure perimeter for meeting the confidentiality and data safeguard requirements for automatic exchange of information. This tool aims at helping countries to move faster on the implementation of these requirements, so that they can fulfill these requirements and engage in automatic exchange of information, both on terms of CRS data as well as for CBC, the country-by-country reporting exchanges. We are also helping, and we will continue to help those countries who are already exchanging information automatically to develop and implement an administrative compliance framework to make effective, to ensure the effectiveness of their implementation, which is one of the requirements of the standard, as well as on making the effective use of the data they are receiving. As we have identified that building capacity also encompasses training and developing skills, we are organizing training events in different formats, on-site, virtual, online, etc. So we are trying to use all the formats possible to develop skills in all relevant areas for transparency, tax transparency. And finally, the Global Forum will continue to build capacity on the cross-border assistance and the recovery of tax claims. We have a regional workshop to be held, and I want to emphasize here that we had just already in 2023, I'm going to report on this next year, but just to highlight here, we had one event in partnership with FATF in Uganda to discuss this form of assistance, and we have another one scheduled to take place next week in partnership with CREDA. So as I conclude, I want to thank all the donors and partners of the Africa Initiative for their commitment and their support and their trust. Without that, we could not have gone that far, and we hope we can count on their support in this partnership, so that we can move faster and further. Thank you.
Thank you, Zaida, for very comprehensive feedback, very insightful, and clearly, beyond any doubt, demonstrates the impact, but also acknowledges that whilst we are encouraged by the success, that we think so much more can be achieved And this is part of the purpose of this meeting, to explore how we step up our efforts. I would like to invite Mr. Logan Ward, the Executive Secretary of the Africa Tax Administrators Forum, to comment on the findings of the Tax Transparency Report for 2023. Mr. Ward.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you,
Bonjour.
Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone.
Monsieur Edward, Monsieur
Mr.
Edward,
Edward,
co-président de l'initiative africaine.
For the African Initiative.
Madame Zaida Manata,
Madame
chef
Zaina Manata,
secrétariat
head of
pour
Secretariat
Forum mondial.
for the World
Tous
Global
les directeurs
Forum.
généraux et commissionnaires généraux présents ici,
Here,
tous les délégués à
all
cette
the
réunion.
delegates to this meeting.
Je voulais vous saluer en
I
français,
would love to
mais
greet you
mon
in French,
français n'est
but my
pas
French is
bon.
not as good.
Définitivement n'est pas bon que Madame Zaida.
Definitely, it's not as good.
Donc,
Madame
je vais
Zaida
continuer
Manata,
en
so
anglais.
therefore, I am going to continue in English.
Mais après ceci, s'il vous plaît,
But after this,
bienvenue dans ma vie.
welcome
Le cap
in my city,
et sa belle montagne
the
s'appelle
and it's
Wuri
beautiful
Kwaha.
mountain is called Wuri
Aussi,
Kwaha.
il s'appelle Table Mountain,
It's also
mais
called Table Mountain, but
Wuri Kwaha is
Wuri
the name
Kwaha,
given by popular indigenous. Wuri Kwaha. Maintenant, je continue en anglais. Merci pour votre petite attention en français. I want to congratulate the Global Forum and its head, Zaida Manata, and the team for the launch of this 2023 Tax Transparency Report. You know, globalization has introduced an increasingly international dimension to financial transactions. So the exchange of information process assists tax administrations in accessing these offshore accounts and assets, which otherwise would have been difficult in the absence of the implementation of this exchange of information agenda. And so the launch of this tax transparency report of the Global Forum, OECD Global Forum information, Global Forum on Exchange of Information and Transparency is yet another milestone in our collective effort to improve this tax transparency. Earlier, we heard about the huge loss in tax revenue due to illicit financial flows and how these numbers are increasing and the impact this will have, colleagues, on our ability to achieve Agenda 2063 or the Millennium Development Goals for that matter. And so this report shows an important set of growth. It shows a growth in the implementation of exchange of information on request, and importantly and significantly, movement in the automatic exchange of information. Probably not the most desirable in pace, and there we need to work on, but it shows that. So the report, for me, highlights some important statistics. Some I will not repeat because Madame Manata has mentioned them in her presentation. It is significant that 76% of Global Forum members, most of whom are also members of ATA, have established now exchange of information units, which is a step in the right direction. Because without a functioning EOI unit, it is impossible to do this work. We have also heard about the amount of revenue recovered according to the report as a result of exchange of information on request as well as automatic exchange of information. And this is testimony to a very encouraging signal to those countries who are yet to implement these standards. exchanging tax information equals extra tax revenue. And it's very useful in this report, Zaida, that increasingly we are focusing not on compliance or numbers of accessions, but focusing on the revenue impact. Because that, ladies and gentlemen, is the driver for our participation. The ability to show those who must make the decisions, especially the policy and legislative decisions to make EOI work, what the revenue impact of these are. Because often, and in most cases, for exchange of information to work, you need a legal framework, a parliamentary political process framework, and you need technology and security and the ability to use this. Therefore, resource and investment. And people who do investment in anything want to see a return for investment in the first place. And so the report focusing increasingly on that is very useful for everyone. One country, as Zaida explained, obtained over 10 million euros through EOI exchanges. And there are other additional very important facts inside this report, as Zaida has presented to us, that I think is very useful to serve as an encouragement to further work on the expansion of our EOI activities, specifically our exchange of information with each other and the ability to exchange information, especially with resident countries where the taxpayer is resident elsewhere. In terms of capacity building, you have seen a slide on that, and I'm pleased to say to you that in the technical assistance provided to the 33 member countries, that ATAF has been part of that. We participate in programs with the Global Forum, and we also have a 9-year running EOI program that focuses on the establishment of competent authorities and the movement of competent authority office, which the report indicates. Part of the problem here being that the policy and competent authority office is often located in the Ministry of Finance. And the movement of that into the tax administration, where the actual exchange of information takes place, is in fact a very long political and legal process. And that forms a lot of part of the work that we've been doing over the last period. And then, of course, the training that is also provided. And so, while the report gives us hope for the current situation and an optimistic view of the future, we must take note that only 4 countries account for the majority of requests sent, and only 2 countries alone accounting for 75%. Those numbers must change. And so African countries must therefore show more commitment to exchange of information and transparency, but they must be provided with the necessary resources to do so. We in ATAF have noted that technical assistance requests from member countries related to exchange of information and transparency are far less compared to that technical assistance required, for example, for transfer pricing. It's an interesting phenomenon because if you consider the fact that despite other programs, including Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 conversations, there isn't really more than about a 3 to 3.5% of tax to GDP available in chasing after corporate taxation, although we seem to focus our attention there. This exchange of information instrument allows for the broadening of our taxability through broadening the domestic tax base, through looking at new taxes and looking especially through beneficial ownership and other downstream instruments that exchange of information allows. So it's an important instrument that can potentially offer a lot more and even Pillar 1 and 2 can offer you. And so the implementation of these standards are really important. Just one more thing. The mention of the multilateral instrument and those who have joined it have shown the benefits there are. We have also seen that Africa has a very limited treaty network amongst each other, and the joining of the into that multilateral instrument has not been at the pace at which can benefit the continent. In 2011, ATAF developed the African Agreement on Mutual Assistance in Tax Matters, the AMATM. And this allows African countries to have an information exchange agreement as well as joint audits and joint actual technical cooperation with each other. So the work with and in support of the African Mutual Assistance in Tax Matters Agreement has contributed to the currently beyond $4.2 billion of tax assessment done through the work of the ATAF Technical Assistance Program. Second last point, Mr. Chairman, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. This agreement has a serious amount of potential, despite some of the technical issues in the initial implementation. An important part of the success of this agreement is the exchange of information and the transparency thereof. Hence, in the ATAF program, ATAF in the new decade, we now include support in customs and trade for the benefit of African countries. And we therefore need to enhance our resources in anticipation of an increased demand for EOI support. Finally, there's a problem in locating competent authority officers within the Ministry of Finance, and that shift is a key part of improved information exchange. Secondly, automatic exchange of information, as preferable as it is difficult due to the high IT costs associated with it, the complexity of the international Common Reporting Standards framework, the qualifying competent authority agreement for CBCR reports deposited by headquarters. It's cumbersome and difficult for African countries. Therefore, we think it's an important consideration for the Global Forum to consider the call that international companies with multinational enterprises must do local filing, and that will probably enhance the ability to benefit from exchange of information. This report is an important report, and we can draw from the important statistics and we can see the impact. We must use it to exchange information, but also use it to manage our compliant risk. And the report must continue to focus on the revenue impact. In that regard, ATAF, as well as ATAF in partnership with the Global Forum, is ready to support, like we currently do, all of our members, especially those who are struggling with the peer reviews and in preparation of those peer reviews. I'd like to thank the Global Forum, Mr. Zaida, and you, Mr. Co-Chair, and Mr. Chody, for the cooperation, and ATAF stands ready, together with our partners, CREDAP and WATAF, as well as the African Development Bank, to continue this work. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watt. As we get ready to launch the report, I'd like to also thank the African Union Commission, together with ATAF, for the support and the endorsement of the report. So, if you don't mind joining me. So, thank you. Just goes a photo shoot with the board. Have made good time, and our next item is scheduled for as the noon gun in Cape Town goes off, is progress and challenges of tax transparency in Africa and how do we ensure a collective move. Item number 5, and the session will be moderated by my friend and colleague, Mr. Sudamo Lau, Director General of the Mauritius Revenue Authority, and I would like to invite Mr. Lau. As we do so, the panelists, Ms. Lee Everts, Chief of the Macroeconomic Analysis Section of the Macroeconomics and Governance Division of the United Nations Economic Commission, if they can come forward. Again, Mr. Lau will introduce you again later on. Mr. Nicholas Yanusi, the Director General of Taxes in Benin. Mr. Kwesi Obeng, Accountable Governance Lead in Oxfam. And in place of Ms. Regina, we'll again have Mr. Edward Piri from the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority. Over to you, Mr. Lau.
Ms. Manata has presented the key findings of the Tax Transparency in Africa 2023 Africa Initiative Progress Report. It shows that African countries are making significant progress in implementing the tax transparency standards and are reaping the benefits of their use in the fight against tax evasion and other illicit financial flows. Nonetheless, while African countries have continued to enhance their EOI infrastructure, for example, by widening their network of EOI relationships, delegating competent authority powers to the tax administrations, and establishing EOI units, among other things, not all African countries are making effective use of these infrastructures. Only 19 countries sent EOI requests in 2022, and only a limited number of countries can, and only a limited number of countries reported having identified additional revenues from the information received. In addition, automatic exchange of financial accounts information presents a great potential. In 2020, one African country raised over EU or 10 million in additional revenues from the use of AUI data, which exceeded obviously the cost invested in establishing the infrastructure for EUI. However, only 5 African countries are currently exchanging information automatically, with other 5 committed to first automatic exchanges by a specific date. This is a total of 10 out of 37 Africa initiatives. In this session, we'll talk about the key findings of the Tax Transparency in Africa 2023 report and elaborate on how African countries could close the gaps under the framework of the Africa Initiative. To discuss the findings of the report and propose concrete steps that could be undertaken by African countries to take full advantage of the tax transparency standards and established EUI infrastructures as tools for promoting compliance, combating tax evasion and other illicit financial flows, and raising revenue for development. I am pleased to welcome a high-level panel composed by 4 panelists as follows: Ms. Lee Evers, Chief of the Macroeconomic Analysis Section of the Macroeconomics and Governance Division, United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, Mr. Nicholas Yunossi, Director General of Taxes, Benin, Mr. Edward Phiri, Acting Commissioner Revenue, Zimbabwe Revenue Authority, and to start with panelist 1, Ms. Lee Evers. So, as the first panelist, I have the pleasure to welcome Ms. Lee Evers, Chief of the Macroeconomic Analysis Section of the Macroeconomics and Governance Division, United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. As the regional arm of the United Nations in Africa, UNECA is mandated to support the economic and social development of its 55 member states, foster regional integration, and promote international cooperation for Africa's development. So, UNECA has been at the fore of the research on illicit financial flows in Africa, supporting the African Union in understanding the amplitude and how to address it. How does UNECA see the contribution of tax transparency in the fight against illicit financial flows in Africa, and how can it be improved across the continent?
Thank you very much, Mr. Lau. Good morning, everyone. Delegates, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the invitation. Congratulations on the launch of your report. Very well done to everyone that was part of it, member states. Thank you very much. So to your question, Mr. Lau, the contribution of tax transparency to IFFs have really been invaluable. But I also think we need to take a little step back and see why this is so important. I mean, this is a big thing for the ECA, for the UN, and I would also like to talk about that a little bit. So, I mean, A lot of references have been made in speeches and discussions so far on achieving the 2030 SDGs and Africa's 2063 agenda, because it has become quite expensive for us to meet these SDGs, given COVID has happened, especially not just COVID, but in this environment of overlapping and constant shocks. And here is where combating IFFs could really assist. That gap in financing is quite key. It's quite key for Africa. The Commission of SARS has indicated that up to plus minus 18 million in revenue is lost annually in Africa. It might even be a bit more. And it becomes a big issue for us as Africa to fund our sustainable development. Maybe also just to put it in context, you've seen that because of all these shocks that has happened so far, and it's external shocks, some are internal in nature as well, we have countries that are in deep debt distress. We've now moved from 8 countries in debt distress to 9 African countries in debt distress. That's a lot, with 12 of them being at high risk of debt distress. This is problematic. And this is sort of the gap that if we can get these funds, it can close some of these gaps. And it's not just the fact that we find ourselves in this situation. Africa also faces, when we go and seek credit externally, we face obviously a high cost of credit with premiums on our interest rates. We've done some calculations in the ECA, and it's about 2%, which is much more than I guess everyone else pays if you have an additional premium on it. And all these results in, when we go look for funds, a landscape of conditionalities that all of you are aware of. And so again, this initiative is very welcome because for us to mobilize our own resources becomes important, but it's also important in the global context as well. Debt, tax, it's all part of public finance. Yes, the one focuses on DMR, the one, a little bit more external, but even your DMR has to be looked at in a global context, although it is domestic, because what we're talking about is cross-border. And it also has to be included in the discussions on the global financial architecture. We hear a lot of discussions on SDRs, how there's unequal allocation. This fits in very nicely with these discussions. Sometimes it's not as loud as these other topics that's been discussed. So, maybe a little bit on the UN's work. So the UN General Assembly adopted the indicator framework for the monitoring of progress of the SDGs with the indicator 1641 on the total value of inward and outward illicit financial flows, selected as one of 2 indicators to measure the progress towards the target of significantly reduced illicit financial and arms flows by 2030, strengthen recovery and return of stolen assets, and combat all forms of crime. And with that, the ECA has been mandated at the 54th session of the Conference of African Ministers of Planning Economic Development, that was last year, to develop a work plan for capacity training on tax-related matters, as well as to support countries in curbing IFFs. And ECA is really, IFF-related resource leakages is a priority for ECA in line with the commitments of that work. And some of the work that's included under DMR that we strive to continue. We strive to continue the work thereon and improve it, is supporting member states and to undertake institutional reforms to curb illicit financial flows. And this initiative really helps with a lot of the things we do. So it helps in some of the methodologies that were developed to get that information flowing in, to determine how much of illicit financial flows there are really per country, etc. And it also helps with reforming the governance on tax expenditures to plug those leakages and participate in international efforts to establish the framework for the return of those assets. So really, the work that the ECA does is highly dependent on the work of the Africa Initiative as well. And we are very thankful for that work because it's sort of, it really makes our job a little bit easier. So at a domestic level, I think I've mentioned some of the work that we've been doing. It's to strengthen tax admin, deepen domestic capital markets, reform financial systems in Africa, and improve economic governance and infrastructure and transparency in the financial system at the global level to improve access to financing. Remember, if your tax revenue looks good, you could easily get better financing anywhere. So this is why I say these things really go hand in hand, and advocating for work towards designing a fair global financial architecture. So the contribution of tax transparency in the fight against illicit financial flows has really allowed countries to obtain successful outcomes, right? And also to have that translated into increased revenue. Not as much as we would like to see, but I think it's good, the progress we've made so far. I do want to maybe touch a little bit on what the key challenges are faced by African countries to tackle these illicit financial flows. And I think the head of the Global Foundation she's basically already summarized what I wanted to say in her slide on looking beyond 2023. So some of the key challenges faced by African countries in their efforts to tackle financial illicit flows are obviously weak institutions and regulatory frameworks. And you know, what I liked about the report is that we've seen that there's been progress in these. There's still some gaps, but obviously that the progress that has been made has really strengthened institutional capacity, and that's what we require. One of the things she also mentioned was sort of the cross-border cooperation. So even within our region, we have fragmented rules and regulations that hinder cross-border cooperation, and we need some synchronization. And I think this is one of the areas maybe also there should be a little bit of more focus on. There's also need because there's quite a lot of work that we need to do with the private sector here as well. So there's some coordination needed with banks, and I mean, this initiative really brings that out, that coordination with the private sector as well, but a little more can still be done. And I mean, these tools that the initiative proposes or brings to the table really assists with this tax, with you know, trying to curb these flows. But again, there will always be gaps. And I was speaking to someone over tea time. He said something very interesting. He said, you know, the revenue space is something that evolves all the time. And as you bring in your new tools, tomorrow you'll need even better ones. I guess that's just how it goes. But one of the big gaps for me, and I'll wrap up very quickly now, that I do see is, as you know, in May 2019, Senegal, on behalf of the Africa Group, called for development of a separate international convention on tax, which would assist in tackling all aspects of IFFs, including flows from tax avoidance, mis-invoicing, profit sharing, other illegal and commercial activities. And this is one of the things I think member states should get behind and get together on. So the challenges that I've just mentioned before, and that basically all of the panelists have mentioned before this, and even the head in her summary slide on looking beyond 2023. We need a tax convention, and to ensure global and genuinely representative forum with multilateral sets of standards. And this is why I'm saying, we might be talking PMR, but it's much bigger than this. So we need to talk as a cohesive voice in the international space on these issues. So basically, a tax convention should be there for multilateral standards for corporate tax, for the necessary tax cooperation between governments, and to deliver comprehensive multilateral tax transparency. And when this was brought in front from this Africa group, they called it the ABC in full. I think it should be the A to Z in full, because once we exclude B to Z, there's always gaps, right? Since we just spoke about that. And so the key challenge in this would be for member states to, there should be a critical mass of states that come together for this proposal. And I know there's been a lot of work there on so far, and I think maybe the AU can also, the AUC can also provide some comment on that when they speak later on. Because the thing with this type of convention is it needs to be convincing. If it's not convincing, no one is gonna perceive it as meaningful, and we need to build that case. The framing of the issue, the policy objectives, political dynamics, all of that should be in there. And all in all, I do think that this initiative has really helped the work that ETA does with member states on identifying IFFs, and even in future on getting some of those assets recovered. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Levers. Now, our second panelist is the Director General of Taxes Benin, Mr. Nicholas. Benin has joined the Global Forum a couple of years ago and has taken steps to implement and use the standard of transparency and exchange of information upon request, obviously to enhance domestic resource mobilization. I would ask you, what progress has Benin made in putting in place a framework for an effective transparency and exchange of information for tax purposes, and what have been the challenges faced by Benin in this journey?
Merci beaucoup. Je voudrais saluer les organisateurs de cette rencontre et remercier également les autorités sud-africaines pour l'accueil chaleureux qui nous a été réservé depuis l'aéroport de Johannesburg jusqu'à ce lieu. Le Bénin, effectivement, s'est engagé dans le processus d'échange d'informations à des fins fiscales. Et à ce jour, nous avons déjà ratifié l'instrument multilatéral dont nous avons adopté la MAC, et l'Assemblée nationale, le Parlement du Bénin a procédé l'année dernière à la ratification donc, de cet instrument qui a été donc transmis suivant les procédures au Forum mondial. Il ne reste donc que la mise en application. Parallèlement, au niveau interne, nous avons déjà créé l'unité d'échange de renseignements. En 2022, cette unité est mise en place et à date, nous sommes en train de rédiger un manuel de procédure pour mettre les collègues qui sont affectés au travail. Nous avons également programmé pour cette année une session de formation du personnel dédié à cette unité et avec le Forum mondial, nous discutons, nous travaillons pour que cela soit effectif. Donc le Bénin, globalement, fait son petit bonhomme de chemin et ma présence à cette réunion témoigne de ce que le Bénin est résolument engagé pour faire le processus et atteindre les objectifs. Je note particulièrement que la présence des dirigeants au plus haut niveau à ce type de rencontre permettre de mieux comprendre les enjeux et de réaffirmer l'engagement. Donc je crois que j'ai fait le bon choix de venir au lieu cette fois-ci d'envoyer des collaborateurs. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, DG Nadin. Now I will move on to the third panelist, that's Zimbabwe. And Mr. Phiri, you have been welcomed as a new member of the Global Forum and as the Africa Initiative. It shows the level of commitment to the tax transparency agenda in your country. Kindly apprise us as to what exactly is the impact for tax evasion on domestic resource mobilization in Zimbabwe, and what do you think you could gain from the implementation of the tax transparency standards?
Thank you very much, Mr. Sodamo, and good afternoon, delegates. I think as a new kid on the block, I'll touch on the two parts of this question, where we are looking at the impact of tax evasion on domestic resource mobilization. You will notice that there is a big scale and negativity of ifs on Zimbabwe, particularly on its governance and the development agenda. There is that negative impact of tax evasion as it comes in all its forms. And we're looking at it impacting also on our GDP. And as you know, ifs, they include practices such as transfer mispricing, which is the adverse pricing, and also the falsification of invoices and round tripping. All those, they do affect the economy, and we are alive to those negativities. And we've got the tax abuses by some multinational corporations that places a disproportionate burden on smaller domestic firms, which are typically responsible for most employment in African countries and in Zimbabwe. And we are alive to such challenges. But in coming into the forum and the initiative, we are looking at the implementation of the standards of the exchange of information on request and automatic exchange of accounting information. Obviously, changing the landscape in as far as the Zimbabwean economy is concerned. We particularly focusing on how tax evasion has affected the mobilization of the resources and how much they are required for the downstream activities on economic development and the social side of the Zimbabwean. So we're quite happy to be coming on board with the understanding that there will be a lot of exchange of information, both on request and automatically. That will then help us in our transfer pricing and investigations and any other activities that we are involved in, and bringing to closure and conclusion some of the protracted investigations that we do conduct as we try to mobilize the much needed resources. I will add that the hidden economy account for a greater percentage in as far as our work as a revenue authority is concerned. And this is also informed by the fact that there is less sharing of the information that will help us in those investigations. And now, coming on board, we're going to be sharing with the family most of the information that is required for us to conduct effective investigations and hence mobilization of domestic resources.
Mr. DG Benin, can you kindly share us with the next priorities for Benin on the tax transparency agenda, and how can we ensure a collective move towards greater transparency for tax purposes in the continent?
Merci beaucoup. Comme je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, nous faisons le chemin. Je crois que le rapport de 2023 nous inspire beaucoup et nous montre à suffisance que l'Afrique a d'énormes potentiels en échangeant des renseignements. Comme je l'avais dit tout à l'heure, le Bénin n'a pas encore commencé. Nous pensons que l'échange d'informations va pouvoir nous permettre d'obtenir suffisamment d'éléments d'élargissement de l'assiette fiscale. Si je prends le contexte du Bénin, déjà avec les normes en matière de transparence fiscale, les informations qui nous parviennent des institutions en charge de la lutte contre les flux financiers illicites, le blanchiment des capitaux et le financement du terrorisme, nous notons effectivement qu'il existe des niches un peu partout qui devraient nous permettre, par la voie de l'échange de renseignements, avoir des informations. Merci.
Thank you, DG Benin. I would also ask, what are the Zimbabwe's priorities on the tax transparency agenda, and what type of support do you need to unpack its benefit for better domestic resource mobilization?
Thank you very much, moderator. I think basically we're looking at number one, compliance. We want to come in and observe the compliance that is required by both the forum and the initiative, and ensure that we do walk the narrow and straight road in as far as compliance issues are concerned. And on the assistance, obviously, I will keep repeating that as a new baby, but we should be getting out of our diapers as a matter of urgency. We want to hit the ground running. We want to ensure that we get the necessary support in terms of coming up with the requisite structures for us to be able to then get this exchange of information as it comes due on request and automatically. We really need that to be happening as a matter of agents, but obviously there are time frames to it, and all we're saying is that we must be alive to the fact that when that support comes, we are ready to ensure that we are not found wanting, but we are ready for us to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. Now, the House is open to questions and answers. Kindly raise the name of your country, and when the question comes to you, kindly state your name and the country, and then ask the question. Thank you. If there are no questions, they can come little later. Let me summarize as to what do we have and what do we need. This is the purpose of this workshop. Now, when we saw Miss Manata gave us the salient features of the report and each country's place in the implementation. Some are early risers, some are doing it, and some intend to do that. But this project gives us the information. Other projects initiated by the international agencies like ETAF, CATA, they give you the capacity. They give us the capacity to deal with these situations. This project gives us the information. Information is power. So we are being empowered by getting this information which we can use for the benefit of our country's poverty development and economic planning. Now, this information, how do we use that information, again would be a great challenge for our international agencies like Global Forum and ETAF. Previously, since illicit flows, as our friend said, Evers, we have been talking about illicit flows, we have been getting this information, but much of that information in African continent we were not able to use because there were no provisions of transfer pricing in many acts. So this was the job of our tax administrators, that we should have been provided that tool or we should have asked. Now it's almost everywhere, and that has enabled us to utilize that information. Now this information also requires that we should be with legislative powers, with administrative powers, and with the knowledge powers to utilize that information. Now this information, we are talking of additional revenue. The information which we get, in fact, it's not only for additional revenue, it could be extended, it could be utilized in the Anti-Money Laundering Act, because tax evasion predicate offense to the anti-money laundering. That doesn't give us only the additional tax, it gives us the full proceeds of crime, full amounts being confiscated. So since the tax administrators of all the countries are sitting here, I invite them to kindly think over, and we should always be ready to know how to utilize this information. The distortions, the variations between the declared version and what we receive is not sufficient. We should know, and you have seen some countries have utilized it and have have reaped the benefits of this skill. So again, I'm coming back to the House. If there's any question, any comment, any observation, kindly share with us. Would again invite all of the heads of the tax administrations that whatever the stage they are in, the technical assistance is available within the region. If we have any problems in making arrangements to receive this information, to utilize, to send this information to the compliance department, to utilize that information by audit, and then to collect the additional taxes. We should be ready with this strategy, with this process flow, and the knowledge is available, the capacity is available within the region, the countries who have done this, the countries who are this. So in addition to the technical capacity being provided by OECD and ETA, we can also contact the bilaterally with the countries. And in this connection, I would invite all of you that Mauritius has also placed all the features in place, and if there any country needs any information, any benchmarking, we are ready. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawa and the panelists, Ms. Lee Everts, Mr. Nicholas Fanusi, Mr. Kwesi Obokeng, and Mr. Edward Perry for your active participation. Also, thank you to the webinar attendees who have joined us thus far. The next session is also a brief session where we will launch the toolkit for establishing a function for cross-border assistance in tax recovery. For those of you who feel left out, you will see there's a QR code on the banner, which if you scan in the QR code with your smart device, it will download the toolkit. Happy downloading. So let me thank the participants thus far this morning, thank the webinar attendees, and we're off to a good start. This transmission, which has been live up until now, is now concluded. The delegates are invited to enjoy lunch, and those of us who will be part of a short press conference will go into the room that is assigned to it. And that is myself, Zyda, and Mr. Logan Walt, if he hasn't left yet. If he's left. So thank you very much. Enjoy the lunch, and we will see you sharply back at 2 o'clock, 1400 hours. Thank you.